Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where right now it's bloody 10 past 1 again, and I'm joining you, the fresh cup of green. It's the best thing in the bloody world, now wouldn't you say? To all of you out there though, just a fast sort of a disclaimer. Now, I made a slight miscalculation in the amount of days I had until the soft deadline of this project, so that is why I'm going to cover two different genres in order to get through all of the genres that I wanted to talk about in order to get to the end in an appropriate time. That might be why I'm talking really super fast, and why my thought process might not be as well thought of or thought out as it has been in previous videos. But better that than taking anything away, wouldn't you say? Anyway, mates, anyway, without any further ado, today we're going to be looking at horror and satire and critique towards society. It's going to be an awesome time. One can argue if those are really genres to begin with, but that's what we're rolling with. We're obviously rolling and sticking with the 5, which was a question rule when it comes to structure. It's going to be all good. So without any further ado, let's get into it. The first genre that we're going to look at is horror, and to be honest, right, I'm horrified. I'm a real wuss when it comes to these sort of things. I don't like scary movies, I don't like scary books, and I don't like scary noises. I bloody don't like scary anythings. Is that because I'm a wuss, as I said? Probably yes, because they're all fictional, they're not real, but yet I'm really scared about them. So I can probably hint towards really well how much fulfillment I would personally get out of writing a horror story. It would be we'll get there. Let's move in though to the first question. How would I go about designing the scope of the characters, and what would be the main character to gravitate towards? Now, I think that if I would write a horror story, I don't want to rely on the general tropes of jump scares, even in a book. Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I think that's horrifying. I think much more about building an ambience, building an environment where that sort of builds up, and that's horrifying. And the best way I can think about doing that is one of my own fears, and that is being lost in who you are yourself. So I want to make one character that is split among several, and that the way I'm going to do that, or the way I'm thinking about doing that, is making the main character either sort of bipolar in the way that they can be very high or very low in their emotional spectrum, which will generally make them feel like they have two different personalities and that they are alien towards the other, even though they can connect with both, or making them schizophrenic, so that they have many different personalities that each take sort of quote-unquote delight at different times. Then maybe focus on one specific personality out of the bunch, but simultaneously have the others as sort of what we can argue to be supporting characters. Now, one way that this has already been done really well as well is sort of in the movie Split, and probably the book that the movie is based on, that's called Split. I would highly recommend you to go watch that if you would like to have an idea of what I believe truly to be horror. But what I would like to do is looking not at maybe the character interacting with other people and them being scared of the character. No, what I want to be focusing on is the mindset of the character itself, being afraid of that they don't know who they are. And I think that's truly horrifying, and equally as challenging in building an environment around that where that is presently shown. Could be such a thing that they can have different habits, and one day when they step into maybe the shower and they want to grab the soap from where they always grab the soap, they notice that the soap has actually moved and they don't remember doing so, and they never do that. Probably we would need to focus on a personality that's very meticulous and where everything is very specific, and then sort of break those sort of patterns and habits in order to show off that there is something else going on there. And then maybe throughout the book try to interact with other personalities as well, but not make it clear in the beginning that they're other personalities of the same person, so that the reader might think, oh, they just live exactly the same, doesn't they? And then try to build in a natural way and a shocking reveal that this is the same person, and that's what should I say, the intention of feeling an emotion, trying to be persuading that moment should probably be something along the lines of a shiver running down your spine. That's horrible. How can they not know who they are and being lost in themselves? It's probably something I can imagine that lots of teenagers feel when they go through their teenage years. They do not know who they are really, and they're trying to make sense of the world. And so in a similar vein, the character is going to do that as well. Let's move on to question number 2, so that we actually get through this by today, and that's going to be, what would be the geographical confinement of the story? Now, what I would argue to be the geographical confinement of this story is going to be the mind space and the mindset of the main character, instead of an actual room, building, tower, city, nation, continent, world, or universe. No, no, no. I'm talking about the mind space. The actual sort of perception of the character is going to be the thing that defines the physical confinement of the story. Because it should be really, in my intention, or the way I envision it, right? It should be very focused and very meticulously placed on who this character think they are, and being faced with that this isn't who I am, or at least it's just a part of who I am. There is more parts to me that I don't even know about, and that's sort of going to be the physical confinement. Either way, if we need to establish a physical room out in the world, you know, outside of the character, will probably be a specific apartment, or even better, a specific room where we can go over all of these meticulous things and very precise and quote unquote perfect things according to the character being changed all of the time, so that the reader also know the room in and out, and when things change they're like, ooh, who did that? Ooh, spooky. Let's move on to question number 3. What sort of problems, obstacles could I create for the character in this genre? And that's obviously going to be, well, things are going to move and not be the same. And that's going to be horrifying, at least I think so. But that's probably enough of that. You know, I'm scared even talking about it. Making up these different scenarios that I will be thinking about when I go to bed tonight and being like, oh, this is horrifying. Well, let's talk about question number 4. What would be the intended target audience if I were to write a story within this genre? Now, I would say late teens to young adults, because, as I said, they're probably going to be in a state where they're either still struggling but close to figure out, quote-unquote, who they are after puberty, when their body has gone through this enormous change that they can't really put their finger on, and they're just been feeling like outsiders no matter where they are, or even when they're part of a group, they still feel like, this isn't who I was, you know, a couple of years ago. I'm different now. And that's why I think it would be so good to sort of place them in the mindset of reading this book, because they're probably the ones that can truly find experience the horrifying experience of being like, yeah, I don't know really who I am. It's scary. It's all hell. Whilst older people will think that, you know, that was a phase in my life, and they would probably look at this book being more like, oh yeah, I realized when I had those sort of problems, but now I fully understand who I am. And younger, you know, kids would probably be like, I have no idea how that feels like. I'm never gonna change. I'm gonna be the same for all of my life and live with my mom and my dad in this house and never change. So I think that late teenagers and young adults will be the best ones, you know, moving out, moving away from their parents, trying to struggle, finding their own place in their life, and in this world, and who they really are for real. Sort of what I'm going through right now, and you don't think about it as horrifying, but I think that if presented in a creative and imaginative way enough, it can be a truly horrifying experience. Just, you know, focusing on the horrifying aspects of that entire experience. I think that at least an interesting way to go about it. Yet again, trying to gain some inspiration from things like Split and so on and so forth, if you want to know what I'm talking about. Question number 5 though, and this is the one I've heavily hinted about already, I think. How much enjoyment would I get out of creating something within this thematic genre? I'd say fulfillment, yet again, a better word, I should change that. How much enjoyment would I get out of it? Depends on what you say is enjoyment. Yet again, fulfillment, probably a lot. Getting deep into my own perception of who is a person, what makes a person, why is a person like they are. Looking into and how to try and persuade that when dealing with different personalities. What is it like dealing with different personalities? How horrifying is it? Can you learn to live with it? Can you not? Interviewing people who have different personalities, who have this schizophrenia, in order to get their insight and their point of view. Really fulfilling in that way. Enjoyment-wise, I'm really scared of all of these things. Like, you couldn't even believe. These are things that I'm horrified of, rather than spiders, right? I mean, I would rather have a spider that's about J big, right? About J big, crawling around all over my body, than me not knowing truly who I am, and things changing in the environment around me, and I have no clue as to why. Sort of like probably what I imagine Alzheimer's is like and feels like, that things are happening all around you that you do, but yet again you don't do it because you have no memory and no knowing, no knowledge of you doing it. And I think that's really horrifying. I would rather be traumatized with the experience of a huge spider than not knowing who I am, because I think that's even more terrifying. So yeah, that's probably it for this one. Let's move on to the second genre though, so that we actually get done with this today within the time limit on my stupid DSLR. That's still 20 minutes. And that's going to be satire and critique towards society, because this is something that I tend to do all of the bloody time. Every time I upload a video, it's all about, hello everybody. Do you know that there is something in society that sort of, how can I say it? It sort of bugs me. And I'm gonna talk to you for about 10 to 20 minutes about the entire thing, and then introduce my own perception of what is the right answer to this. I think that this genre is specifically made for those people out in society who are real besserwissers, the ones who think that they know best. And sadly, I have had huge parts of my life where I've fallen directly into that category, even though I try to fight myself out of it, and I do my very bloody best, and I think I would do a very great job at it if I do say so myself, but best services rarely does, because it's, it's subjective to say the least. But I think at least I have a lot of experience within the field, which would be good when it comes to actually stating your opinions as true fact of society, right? Anyway, let's get into the 5 questions. 1. How would I go about designing the scope of the characters, and what would the main character gravitate towards? I think conspiracies, right? No, that would be one way of doing it. I wouldn't be very good with that. I think that I would just try to have a character go out, just live out their day, so live out a portion of their lives in what all of us would be considering to be a normal and quote-unquote boring life, and then just have the character observe us doing all of these different things that the character can't really wrap their head around. So the main character needs to be very adventurous without going on physical adventures. Imaginative is probably a better way of saying the same thing. Creative in the way that they express things, and probably very abstract, sort of standing outside of society in a way, but still being highly intelligent and able to see through all of the social structures of society. I realized now, in hindsight, quite quickly though, that as the author, I just refer to me as highly intelligent. I need to be able to interview people who are highly intelligent, and that I would say, maybe you have the perspective I'm looking for, because I probably will be lacking. You need to be, I was going to say humid, but that's the wrong word. You need to be humble when you do these sort of things, because critiquing society ain't the easiest thing to do. It's very easy to point out wrongs, but it's very hard to say that a society that have stood for the last 2,000 to 3,000 years and developed over the last 2,000 to 3,000 years probably have a lot of kinks worked out already, and even the things that doesn't work probably still fulfill some form of role in society. It would be an interesting way. You can critique the government, you can critique religion, you can critique social media, you can critique the internet, you can critique all manners of different things. You could also either make a dystopian future where the character is critiquing things like 1984 style, but maybe a 2084, the direct ripoff, or just 2083. Ethical conundrum avoided. Or put it in a previous historical period where the character will know all of the answers, the character will be growing into knowing all of the answers, but me as the author will have an easier time finding what the quote-unquote right answers in that time actually were, and then introducing those to a character who's living in that space at the time. Probably an interesting way of introducing some obstacles as well. And talking about obstacles, no, that's the 3rd question. We're only in question 2. 2. What would be the geographical confinement of the story? Well, yet again, depends on which time frame we put them in, but otherwise, just what a general person would go through. Probably living in a small town, moving into a bigger town when they're a bit older, maybe when they're going to university, travel a bit, not excessively, but a bit, maybe 1, maybe 2 times per year, but probably 1 for the most part, and then maybe have 1 or 2 years in a row when they skip it because they're focusing on their career, and then just trying to extend it all throughout that period of time, maybe skipping it out before they get a family, maybe when they meet the right one, because they're sort of where my experience gets lost. Even though I can probably acquire that experience through interviews, not the exact specific experience, but I can probably be creative in the way that I will express that in my writing and my creation of a story, a book, a series, a movie, whatever. was maintaining the source material that I will gather from interviews. So we could push it further than that limit of making a family and then look at towards, well, what is it like having the same life but with a family though? Could be a subsequent book, could be the follow-up, who really knows? What I'm saying is that the geographical confinement of a story is yet again like horror. It's not that much about the, the physics around them and in the space around them. It's more like the space and the mindset that the person is in. Now maybe that culture is playing a bigger role and nationwide context is going to play a role, but maybe not the exact geographical confinement that they're in at any given time. More than like a nation, a culture, and a setting, which is exactly what a physical confinement is. Yeah, hooray. But it's hard to nail down a main one when we're talking, you know, sort of an adventurous story, because each and every life is unique and adventurous in itself. Woo! There's going to be, you know, the entire world, basically. Yeah? Happy? Good. Let's move on to question number 3. What sorts of problems and obstacles could I create for the characters in this genre? We already touched upon it, but moving through, could be a new obstacle, could be that the character is actually rising up and saying, you know, I actually think that this is wrong. And then the government, religion, social media, media overall, something, the thing that they are questioning, corporations, whatever, comes just crashing down on them like lightning, crackling lightning, and being like, you might be right, but you ain't gonna tell anyone. And that could be a huge problem for them, and maybe rolling it over to more of a adventure, mystery story, probably talking a lot about that thing when you question. I said it before and it bugs me I don't remember the word. I'll probably figure it out later. But the thing when you're questioning something of society and saying, you know, this isn't really how it is. This is actually how it is. A conspiracy. Yeah, that's what I'm after. Anyway, mates. Anyway. So in order to try to keep it to the sort of story, it could be that they're questioning that, but maybe they feel like they can't actually stand up and rise up for it because it might either hurt people around them or hurt themselves. So that would be a way of treating an obstacle and a problem as well. Them seeing, you know, many things that they question about society, but they feel, you know, the hindrance not being able to rise up against that, let's say, that observation. Moving on to question 4. Quatre, yes. Who would be the intended target audience if I were to write a story within this genre? Yet again, it would probably be adults or senior citizens, because I imagine that you've had to be around for a while to appreciate and to have surely encountered these thoughts or these types of thoughts yourself. And I think that, well, accumulating the years and piling on the years doesn't only mean that you know, get older, also that you piling on observations, which is going to be the entire basis of this story. Observations throughout life, and maybe you need a couple of years in order to actually think about what you saw and what you observed and the continuous behavior you observed in the structures 5, 10, 20 years ago, and you won't realize that until yet again 20 years later. And that's probably why I would try to market it and target a older audience who have gone through this experience naturally, hopefully. Going to question 5 though, how much enjoyment would I get out of creating something within this thematic genre? Wow, we have 60 seconds. A lot. There is a lot of obstacles and a lot of things that I've observed in society that might not necessarily be right, but things that I just wonder about. As a, you know, an example of this, and as confidence to support this and evidence to support this very channel, like the last half year or something, has mainly been about things that I've critiqued about society, which might not be the best thing ever, but still it's something that I can work from. Yet again, this best versus perspective in the past my lives, let's say, a couple of years ago, like 5, 10, 2 months, yeah. No, but like a year ago, 2 years ago, especially when I began university, but ever since then it's exponentially decreased. But that sort of mindset that, you know, I'm right, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna tell a story where my observations are the correct ones and sort of present them in such a way. Anyway, mates, I've 5 seconds left. Have a nice one. I'll see you tomorrow in the roundup. Have a bye.